Well, I barely remember. I can kind of
I think it
guess.
was like the strong delusion we were talking about, the ancient aliens and all that. How,
Right.
but
Yes. Yeah, I wanted to touch into some of these things because of how what so-called conspiracies touch upon the question of flat Earth because it is so out there for a lot of people that
right,
recently I made a few videos about my research and I posted on Facebook and some people are saying yeah this is a total waste of time. Some people don't even want to look into it, but
yeah.
but some other people actually seem to like it and watch it. Um,
Well, that's good. Those are some open-minded people, because most people are not receptive.
right. So how do you think? What do you think of this label conspiracy?
Well, I believe that it was connected to conspiracy by the powers that be in order to associate negativity to it, and that they could, with the indoctrination of all the people, they could make them not even investigate or look into a particular subject matter. It's like MK Ultra, brainwashing, mind control, and keep people away from examining certain subjects just by connecting them to that, as far as a derogatory term, conspiracy. And so, the masses mostly fall in line, and most people, just because of that, like training a dog with a bell, to salivate
Hmm.
for food.
Yeah,
That
Pavlovian
Yeah, right.
conditioning.
Yeah, conditioning, and so they can do that and establish mind control utilizing television and radio and just popular language, the newspapers, the media, especially the television media. They all associate conspiracy with being insane or moronic
Mm.
or idiotic, and because of that, they are able to um, keep people from opening themselves to possibility with regard to whatever issue it is that they connect to that, as far as conspiracy. But the conspiracies are reality, and so they're real. But because,
So what
again,
you what would you call what would you say conspiracy is? Because you use that word in when you explain yourself your position?
no, well, somewhat, it depends on the particular book. But basically, I explained that conspiracy is anything that the powers that be, the overseers of the matrix, don't want you to know about, whether it has truth or it has any basis in reality, or even to challenge, a certain thing like the whole cosmology and the establishment that we are living on a planet that spins once daily as it annually revolves around the sun, and the sun is going around the center of the Milky Way, and the Milky Way also is traveling around some grand universal center. And so they have all this in mind, and then they say that every star in the sky is the sun and has the possibility of having its own planetary system out there. And so all of these conceptions, even though they're all false and all based on real lunacy, they have us conceptualizing and believing in it because of the brainwashing and indoctrination that we've had from Hollywood and now NASA, because NASA is nothing more than a Hollywood production, too. It's just uh, propaganda for mind control that the government uses. And so, but they perfected these kind of things. They've studied and examined. When taxpayer money that should have been going to feed the poor was being used to study mind control and how to do it on a mass scale. And so those kind of things are what the government's into. And they've utilized it to establish further and further dominance and control and the centralization of power, and also keeping people um, basically docile so that they just fall in line and get behind the sheep or the cow in front of them, just
Mm.
follow. Yeah.
Did you ever were you ever in that other side of things? Like Would you recognize yourself in some point in your life as part of or as somebody who believe all these things from television? How was it for you? Like,
Oh yeah, absolutely. And all of us were. I mean, we have no choice in the matter. From the time that we're born into this world, before we have choice or even know that we have choice, we're brainwashed by the media, by our parents, their parents, our grandparents, and on and on and on, by the public, the society, the education system, all the police and government and everything, the television, it's all mind control, and it's all basically to lock us into an accepted ideology for how we should live. And so uh, and it's, of course, this is all not by accident or by um and just evolved or came about randomly. This is all under the authority of the powers that be. They are waging war against us. They are legion, the wickedness in high places, the devils and the demons, which are trying to cause everybody to be brought to judgment with them. And so that's their purpose.
do you think it's kind of an extension of the slavery system that they were doing in the 1600s and for centuries after that? You think that
Well,
has something
actually,
to
it
do with it?
goes, yeah, goes all the way back to the very beginning, the garden, the separation of Cain and Abel and the whole establishment of the Canaanite way, because basically the institution of Cain and his people, they built cities and they brought people under their control. And so they are the governments. And then somewhere along the way, they learned to utilize money as a way to exchange and barter for uh, you know goods and to make it accepted, and so they were able to trick the world that way as well. So yeah, they have centralized the
But
power and come to control all the means.
would you put that category, like for example, if the Chinese had money, through 3,000 years ago, are they
Hmm.
also being part of this scheme that you're talking about, or is the notion of Cain and Abel, the story, you take it to be literal, or you consider it like an allegory to something that's happening right now?
No, I take it to be literal. It's an actual bloodline and lineage, but it only covers the last 6,000 years, what is the modern age. Because it speaks about the pre-Adamic people in the prior times, but that's not covered in great detail in the Bible. Even though it is alluded to, it's not expanded upon in great detail. And so, unless one knows by studying the ancient traditions and the mythologies of the world, how to tie those together into what is revealed in the biblical narrative, one can't really understand the full story. But when you
So I guess
do understand that,
in a way, it is allegorical. I guess because let's say, like you're saying, it's a summary, and we
hmm,
don't know
right,
exact. Those people may not have been called those names, for example, or and
or
we don't
different names in different cultures.
right, or we don't know exactly in which part of the world they might have been. Correct. Well, for example, they might have been in one part of the world, but there'll be people somewhere in other places that their stories are not being told necessarily. Right. At the
Hmm.
same time, maybe these people had writing first, but
Well,
yeah, keep going. Yeah.
Well, I do believe that the first people that, or the first presence that was here long ago were the fallen angels, and the megalithic structures and cities that were built during that time. They're not human. It's not human technology. It shows an angelic presence, the alignment of cities to the stars. Those are not things that humans achieved or had. Um, Even ability to do during that time. That shows us that there was something else and someone else here. And so when you understand that aspect of the story, then you understand the bigger the allegorical aspect of it. But it is very literal as well. There are people, groups, and as far as the last 6,000 years, all that is marked in the genealogies of Cain and Abel. Because the old because I do this in my work in my books. I
Mhm.
tie the ancient account of the war in heaven, where everything, the forces of light and darkness separated, and everything began as far as the order and the division of good and evil. The fall of Lucifer and Satan and the rebel angels, the Anunnaki, archons, whatever you want to call them, the forces of darkness. That long ago this war began, but then humanity in the last 6,000 years of our story is now just a new part of all that and that ancient tale. But when you understand the fullness of the story, it is very much literal, and it shows even in humanity we have a division of people that support the devil and evil and darkness, and people that support light and are basically good and that are children of God. There
But
really is a bloodline lineage connected to both sides.
when it comes to that, though, like, what's your view on the kind of secret societies in government? Because apparently, for a lot of the Masons, the light is a big thing. This notion of light, the light bearer would be Lucifer, right? That's the name.
Right,
As the
but
light
it's
bearer.
all upside down, it's twisted. And the story, Lucifer always counterfeits and turns everything upside down in order to make evil good and good evil. So you have to understand the deception there and how it is that they've done it and how the secret societies work and basically how they, as a pyramid structure, bow down to these forces
But
because
do they
they
do
are the
it?
ones that are
Do
behind it.
do most of them do it willingly? I mean, as a first level Mason, is that person know exactly what they're getting into all the way through the
No,
master
no, they
levels?
don't know.
They don't know,
No, they have no idea.
right?
They think they're just joining a good old boys club that hangs out and does charity work and does good, raises money for the organization, but they have no idea they're involved in evil. And at the very high levels, those that organize and raise these funds and control these funds through these secret societies, they're the ones that are pulling the agenda and utilizing the money for evil and the perpetuation of it. But no, it isn't until they get in very high levels, and this is part of the structure. They've established it in such way, and they corrupt people as they go up the ladder. And by the time they get to the highest levels, if they've not dropped out or fallen out, they are very corrupted, and then are willing to take that next step.
Have
And
you
then they're truly choosing evil knowingly.
have you talked to people who are involved with the masonry and who came out?
A few, yeah, of even some of these high level families,
Mm-hmm.
and it's surprising that they are even, still alive. And so, yeah, but I don't, that's not my specialty, that's not my focus, but I have talked to people like that. My focus is studying the ancient manuscripts, and that's where my interest lies, and that's where my truth comes from. Because I don't want to know or hear about the opinions of others, especially men that only study the opinion of other men. I'm going to get the story from the ancient manuscripts and study it and learn about it in that way because I find that that's where truth lies in the mythology. It's not opinion, the ancient stories of peoples around the world, that in studying that material, one can come to that the Most High will lead one to discernment on the underlying truth of how those things are connected. But I do find that there is truth in all things, but then there is also leaven, because the Satan and the powers of darkness, they have twisted everything, they have taken over everything, and have made it corrupted it. And so even the ancient mythologies, like with the story of Dionysus, I was even talking about that in a show recently, that the Thracian chronicles and understanding who the Thracian peoples are, because they predated the Sumerians and the ancient Egyptians, and they were believers of Yeshua. They knew about the what is the Holy Trinity. And this Holy Trinity is reflected in a lot of the even the pagan mythologies and the ancient peoples, the story of the ancient peoples going way back. You always see a story of a father, a mother, and a holy child, and that represents even the human family. When you know that the Holy Spirit is the feminine aspect of the Godhead, well, then it makes sense that there's so much with regard to the feminine in the ancient traditions, but now a lot of that has been twisted and being corrupted, the actual worship of who those people represented, because there's only one Godhead that created all things and brought all things forth. But that worship has been um, deviated and led astray, which is now why most religions involved in idolatry, they are truly and unknowingly worshiping Satan and the darker forces. Just like with the Masons, they think the light, as far as Lucifer being a light bearer, making a sacrifice for humanity, and giving us knowledge and free will and opportunity to learn through good and evil, that's a positive thing. And to some degree it is, except for when you understand the real story of how we were bright natured angelic beings and we were never supposed to be in a fallen state and have to succumb to death. Then when you understand the real story, it's very tragic, and it's a very, the fall of humanity, but the Christ coming to rectify the fall and to redeem all in the story of that. That's what makes the story really beautiful, and the blessed hope of having um, salvation and everlasting life through uh, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit is also a beautiful story when you understand the fullness of it, and
Okay.
don't get caught up in the religions that worship the fallen angels or the devils and demons and things like that.
Do you believe that this the spirit of the Messiah or Christ came before as well in other generations and other times before our time,
Oh, yeah,
like
absolutely.
like
It
as
even talks
Krishna
about
or
the
Buddha or
No, I don't
not those.
necessarily believe that he came as in former embodiments. He only
Mhm.
took on flesh one time, and that was as the Son of God and incarnate with all the prophecies. There's over 1,000 prophecies which prove that that we know of, that is confirmed, that he fulfilled, even being born of a virgin, being born in Bethlehem, being of the tribe of Adam and the seed of David, all these different things. But no, I don't believe that he came in previous embodiment, but I do believe that there are and have been very knowledgeable people all throughout the ages that have had discernment and access to truth. And that in truth, when you understand, as far as those that represent the priests and the prophets of every age, they were very literally walking in the same example. And then you have those that represent the seed of Cain, which were the kings and the queens and those who uh, claimed divine right to rule at the
Mhm.
expense and cost of everybody else. And so these kind of stories are intertwined and interconnected. But again, there is an underlying truth, because even in the Hindu mythology, you see a reflection of the same thing, this holy trinity, and then the forces, the devils, the demons, the forces of darkness, legion, opposing. And this story
Oh
of
yeah.
good and evil is represented in every culture worldwide.
Mhm.
And then also the weirdness
Well, in
as
the
far as the
Hindu,
story
in
of the
in
giants.
the Mahabharata, for example, you have a number of virgin births, not just one. You have it.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
have
I know.
five. In the case of the Pandavas, all the five of them are well, not virgin, but without conception in the regular sense of the
Mhm.
word. She,
Yeah.
their mother Kunti, she um, used mantras to call upon divine beings who came down, and each had a she had a baby by each of them, who then became the Pandava brothers. And one of them, Arjuna. There's actually six because the first one, she was a maiden, and the sun god comes down, and it's the birth of Karna, that she then put him in a basket in a river, and he was brought up by I think a charioteer. So the story of Karna is very similar to the story of Moses, in that
Right.
regard.
Yeah.
It's only that's the other way. No, it's the same. It's the same. No, the other way around,
Right.
right? It's
Uh-huh.
inverted.
Uh-huh.
Whereas Moses was born in the lower, suppose, caste, I guess, or by the Hebrew, and then sent into the palace, royal palace. Karna is the other way around.
Uh-huh.
He's born the son of a princess, I guess, sent out.
Yeah.
But these
Well,
things are very similar, right?
yeah,
These
I agree.
stories,
Yeah.
there's a
Well,
number of those stories. So this kind of immaculate conception idea
mhm.
goes back a long way before the
Right.
time of Christ, right?
Right. Yeah, this is something that also that I explained and talked about because I had mentioned earlier the Thracian culture, which again they were ancient Christians, and their script was just decoded in 2006,
What is the
and it
book there?
shows the Thracian script decoded. There's four parts, but they're mostly only found in Bulgarian. We did release an English translation of it, but we've since had to pull it from the market just for a short time. But anyways, it shows that the Thracian people, which are the oldest post-flood people, going back as far as 7,000 years, and they predate the Sumerians and the ancient Egyptians, the Sumerians by almost 2,000 years. And
Mhm.
so their artifacts are also found to be the oldest as far as post flood. Um,
Have you? Oh,
found.
okay, okay. Yeah, I wonder if you've
Well, I didn't get
seen.
to the point yet as
Yeah, yeah,
far as
sorry, sorry, sorry.
all right, let me explain. Well, now the reason I mentioned that and brought that all up is because it shows that they also, in their oral traditions, which have just recently been deciphered, they talk about this again, this Trinity, this Godhead, the Father, the Mother, and the Son, and they knew that Christ would be born of the seed of Adam, that these prophecies, and that he would be a virgin, and so this knowledge of the virgin birth predates the time of Christ, and even before he came into flesh form, because this knowledge was passed down. The Thracian people are the seed of Seth. I mean the seed of Japheth. They are the children of Japheth, and the stories are some that have mostly been lost. But when you again understand this component of the history, you see that the knowledge of Christianity and theology and the teachings and the common uh, of it, even like the stories of Christ, go back to even before the pagan cultures, as far as the Sumerian, because most people think that like the flood stories of Sumer, that the Bible and the stories of Noah were based on that. But these traditions, again, this is post pre-flood, before the time of the Thracians and the Sumerians and the ancient Egyptians, and these stories were passed down through the children of Adam and were known. And the prophecies, as I show in one of my newest books that I'm working on, the ancient prophecies of Christ, they show that these teachings go back and precede even the pagan cultures like the Aramans, and which again, it's only because Satan has twisted the story over the time of history and changed the religions and made them his own, that this knowledge has been lost.
So
But in
this
truth,
when you talk about Satan, do you think it's an actual person, right? Is this correct?
absolutely, yeah,
So is
it's
it
a
one individual?
no, it's a many. Well, yeah, there's one that is Lucifer, that was cast out of the heavens, that led a temptation of all the other angels. He was the first created, and the archangel, that the Most High created before all the others. But and he was the highest, and he was the leader,
So
called the
is this by design by God? Would God because for example in the
well, yeah,
Hindu.
he established the angelic hierarchy. Yeah, he established the angelic hierarchy, and Lucifer was the first created, and he had control of the angels before the Christ as the light was introduced to the angels and to the creation. We have then the story of Genesis, going back to the very beginning, when light was called forth by the voice of the Father, this is when Christ was introduced to the world and to the angelic hierarchy. And this is also when Lucifer became jealous and decided to try to overthrow him. And he went to all the other angels, and one third of them joined
Mhm.
him in rebellion. And for that, they were cast down and they
Well,
exiled here to the earth.
that sounds a lot like the story in the Mahabharata.
Well, it is. I mean,
Because Duryodhana, who's one of the 100 sons of the king, of who became the king, because it's complicated, but he was jealous of the Pandavas, and he disrespected their wife as well, and this led to the war, the big war, the Mahabharata. But it was
uh-huh.
because of jealousy, and then the Pandava brothers, they are cast into exile as well for a
Yeah,
while. Then
very
later they come
interesting.
back and they get revenge, so to speak. But everybody dies
Yeah,
at the end.
yeah.
Um, but it is because of jealousy, and there is that kind of element of alignment with brothers aligning on one side against another side.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, yeah, I find that the story is universal. That this theme and the characters and like the ancient Sanskrit manuscripts, they speak about these fallen ones. Even the ancient Sumerian manuscripts, they talk about the Anunnaki and these demigods, the
right.
superior kings list. They show how when they first were cast down, they had extraordinary long lengths of reign and rule, and they were over even then the pre-Adamic peoples. They had enslaved all of those peoples, and got them involved in things like blood sacrifice and cutting out the still beating hearts of. They established these kind of religions which are abomination to the Most High God,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why we see these kind of evil things being perpetuated by these so-called high beings,
Mm-hmm.
the extraterrestrials, or these particular beings that came from the heavens, and it's because they were evil. And the story of Enoch tells us and shows us that in great detail. And so, unless you understand that aspect of the story, you can't make sense of why it is that these so called dragon or Anunnaki or seraphim angels or whatever you want to call them, cast of angels that was cast out of the heavens and banished here to the earth, why they were involved in even taking wives for the daughters of men, raping human women and men. And there were both male and female, as far as the stories of Ishtar, Anunnaki, or whatever. You have all these stories where they tried to seduce even men and women, and these stories were about the fallen angels, and that's why they, show even they were grandiose in their living. There was never a time where humanity or the fallen angels were primitive. We were never primitive. We have always been very sophisticated and technologically superior. And what you see in the story of humanity, the truth of humanity and the fallen angels in this world, is that when they were first cast down, they had very high technology. They had skyships, they had the ability to do things that we can't conceive of doing now. Even with the building of megalithic sites and megalithic structures, we can't replicate that now. We have no
Right.
idea how they did those things.
Well,
And so,
mainstream, I mean not mainstream, but in anthropology in general, which is quite critical of colonialism, the idea of the primitive has been critiqued to extinction, at least among
that's
anthropologists.
good.
They don't believe that they are
Yeah.
primitive people. There's a racist term that
Yeah, it totally is.
it's now completely out of nobody talks that way. Actually, in the 19th century in Brazil, of all places, which is not credited because the narrative has to be always an Anglo narrative for even in anthropology and in academia. Um, even if it's good, they will recognize what's in their language. They don't look into other languages very much. But the Brazilians were intellectuals in Brazil in the 19th century were the first to recognize the power and the beauty and the depth of the Tupi Guarani language. and also to compare the European customs to the customs of the Indians, the Guarani, Tupi Guarani Indians, who did not have all kinds of vices that the Europeans had. Like the Europeans had syphilis, they were alcoholics, they went with
Right.
prostitutes, uh,
Yes.
and the Guarani, the Tupi Guarani didn't. And they were decimated by the coming of so-called civilization, which is cities,
Mhm.
and just something I take as a stand against. I don't even drive. I don't. I think that cars are some of the worst things that ever invented in the world. Just the amount
Yeah, I
of people
agree.
that they kill, the amount of animals that they kill, how much pollution they generate, how much noise they generate, which is something that a lot
Right.
of people don't even talk about, is the
Hmm.
noise pollution of cars and the danger they are, and how people fall in love with them through this kind of propaganda, the obsession that there is with cars. And it, for me, it just proves that we're not evolving or progressing in a direction, that
Right.
technology has nothing to do with progress. And
Right.
that's the story of the Guarani. Guarani were spiritually developed, and so they don't need to have things and stuff originally.
Right.
And it's all embedded in their language, which is a beautiful language. It's still around.
Hmm. Hmm.
The Paraguay, I think, uses Tupi Guarani as one of their languages, but it's kind of a side on this.
Yeah.
The So you accept the Book of Enoch, right? Have you read? I translated a while ago a book called The Shepherd of Hermas. Have you ever heard of this?
Yeah, I've read that. Hmm.
Yeah, and what do you make out of that? Do you have ever got into that? Because that's quite an odd, very difficult book. There's a story of a tower,
Yeah.
and do you remember
Yeah.
this?
Yeah. All these different parables and
Right,
how the woman represented the church.
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I find the same theme repeated in all of the ancient manuscripts. We have the story of this bloodline war between these two people groups, and then you have the contest between the spiritual powers, the Godhead against Satan and Legion, and so it's repeated in everything. And as far as those particular, because they were part of the original 80 book
Mhm.
canon of the King James version of the Bible, they're prophetic and they show that they were inspired by the Most High God, which a lot of books you can find. Any book that is prophetic and that has something where it revealed something that could not be known or understood by humans shows, in my opinion, that it's authored by the Most High God because He does author and inspires books through the prophets. And so that's what makes the difference as far as what I utilize to establish my foundation. Because
Mhm.
I've read a lot of everything, and in there, there's huge amounts of stuff out there. I know that I can definitely depend upon and rely upon the Holy Bible as truth because there's prophecies that have been fulfilled thousands of years, and that many one third of the scriptures are even speaking about this day and age. And so, there's prophecies that are still being fulfilled. And so, those are the books that I like to read and study to seek out the truth of what we're dealing with and what we're going to be contending with, and what, as far as the past, present, and future. And
What do you think about organized religions? Because in Hermas, for example, his revelation comes through when he fasts and he goes into the woods, and
right,
that's when the shepherd comes to him. He's
right.
using the word episkopos, that is
Hmm.
translated into English as a bishop, but in Greek it doesn't mean that. It just means an overseer. It has nothing to do with the bishop of the
Yeah.
church.
uh,
It's especially at that time, which was the second century, when Hermas wrote that book. So there was no church with bishops.
right.
And that's a translation of episkopos. Scopus is just to watch, right? Like telescope or microscope.
Mhm.
And epi is a perimeter. So, and the idea is that people congregate by affinity, and it has nothing to do
Uh,
with organized religion. What do you think of organized religions? Were
I
you ever involved
believe
with
that
them?
religions and the organization structure for instance, like the Catholic Church, that it has been twisted and manipulated by Satan in order to steal worship from the Most High God and direct it to Himself. And that most organized religions have been utilized and twisted in such way to lead people astray. But all that is orchestrated by the powers that are aligned against us. In my early teen years, I studied a collection of books called the Carlos Castaneda series, a
Right.
Yaqui way of knowledge, and it was about the apprenticeship between Carlos Castaneda and a Native American Mexican
Don
Indian,
Juan.
Don Juan, who was a Nago.
Yeah,
And
you know that there's a big controversy about that, right? The
well, yeah,
Castaneda.
yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I understand that.
right.
Whether they're real or not, but whether it's
Yeah,
real or not, the
yeah, yeah.
stories and the way that the Native American peoples, the way that they do vision quests, how they fast and they go out into nature by themselves and they seek to experience the divine
Hmm.
one on one, not through some intermediary or some
Oh
particular
yeah,
church or some particular group. They go to into the wilderness to meet God face to face.
oh yeah.
And in my opinion, that's the way, and that's the way I did it. And when I was younger, I decided to break away from the 9 to 5 and to spend 4 years living out of a van where I traveled through and lived in different national parks and state parks and places of beauty, seeking to experience the divine directly. And I wrote about these experiences, and that was how I did it for myself.
You wrote
Those
as you were doing it, or
Yeah,
you?
one of my first books is called When the Evening Dies, and it talks about my breakaway from the normal 9 to 5 routine and
Mhm.
materialism and corporate slavery and all of that, and going into the wilderness to seek God and experience of the divine. And so, one of the ways that I did that, and one of the ways that I learned was a native tradition called sweat lodges,
Oh yeah.
where where you go in and we would sweat all night from
Are you? Do you have native
sunset.
ancestry?
I do, yeah.
For
Uh,
what? From where?
Apache, my ancestors. My dad was born in New Mexico, and my ancestors from that area are tied to the Apache.
Okay. So you're
So,
doing sweat
anyways,
lodges as a as a kid. You're involved in.
no, not as a kid, as a
Okay.
teenager. But again, when
Yeah.
I decided to leave and to give up my job in college and just travel. I sold everything that I had and I bought a van that I could sleep in and that I could travel to different parts of the country in. And so that's what I did for the next 4 years. Is I traveled through different national parks, different state parks, different parts of the country, and I wrote poems and I stayed for as long as I wanted and had no schedule, no place that I needed to be, and I really just enveloped myself into nature and to seeking relationship with God. And so that's what brought me to the understandings and the knowledge and the teachings that I now have because of the process of doing vision quests and being out there and also being a writer that I was able to commune with the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit in a way that brought me to revelation on so many things. And so um,
How did you have? How did you make this decision to break away?
it was inherent. And I think this is something that is within all of us, that we are born with an inherency to travel and be alone with the creation and the creator and to come to know each on an intimate level that most never take the chance or the time to actually do and fulfill. And so those that really do, it becomes the greatest learning experience of your life. And then it also helps you to grow and learn lessons as far as, a human being human in this world and being in a fallen state and a fallen way of being. And really looking into and trying to find answer to the larger questions of who we are, why we are, where we are, and why all this is the way it is and things are as they are. And so I found a lot of the answers to a lot of that in what I did. And I believe that all people, if they have the opportunity, should do the same because that's church. That's where you're going to find religion. That's where you're going to know directly who God is and what God is all about and what this world is all about. Otherwise, um, really, in my opinion, most people just they're fooling themselves. If they believe God is what you learn from a book or what the pastor and preacher about in a pulpit, yeah, to some degree, but that's not experience. And when you experience God and know God directly, that's a completely different thing. And so
right?
um,
Do
that's what I
you
recommend.
was I mean, it might sound like a strange question, but do sound, the sound environment, does that play into this experience? Because I'm assuming you're living in a city before you did this, and
Yeah,
for
I
me,
did.
when I went and lived in for a little while, for only 5 weeks in the northwest coast, and with the Tsimshian people, in Dolphin Island, there was one car in the community and 400 people in this little island off the coast of British Columbia. And when I came back to Vancouver, it was um, I couldn't really adapt. Every sound was so loud. Things are so different. I had been starting to get attuned to that environment.
Uh,
Um,
yeah.
it was complete. It
Eh,
was something completely, and it changed me forever.
right. Yeah. Yeah, that's the way it was for me. And it because once I spent the time to be with the creation and away from everybody, not having to talk to anybody, you listen to the natural symphony, the natural cacophony of the creation, the birds singing, the way that when the sun rises and first makes appearance, that everything begins to sing in praise to it, and then you have the natural cycle of life beginning with the animals going about getting food and raising their young and feeding themselves and taking them care of themselves or preparing for winter or whatever. It's the natural harmony of life, and you really get tuned into that. You listen to that, and you hear it. Whereas when most people live in the city, they're completely disconnected from that, and they have no idea, and they miss out even on the beauty of the unfolding of every day and every moment. It's such a blessed dream, and yet because they're not tied to it, they don't recognize it, they're completely disconnected from it. But when you do these kind of things and take this kind of sojourn, sabbatical, and go into the wilderness seeking vision quest, or even with your life, when you make it a way of being, instead of just something that you do every once in a while, like most people take 1 week of vacation a year to disconnect from their lives and to break their habits. And
Mm.
even then, they mostly
Go to
um,
resorts or something like that.
yeah, exactly. So they're never really connected to nature and the fullness and that it takes to come to deeper, revelations, and, things being revealed to you as far as the more profound aspects of who we are and why we are.
So
And so
how old are
that's
you when you did this? And were
18.
you in New Mexico at the time? Where were you?
No, I was here in
In
Atlanta,
Atlanta.
and so I left. I sold everything, gave up my job, quit school, sold my Jeep, and I bought a Ford Windstar. And
Mhm.
because I had sold that Jeep, I had $500 every month coming in as income to support me on my adventures. And
Mm.
so that's what I did, and I just paid for gas and lived and slept. I had a Coleman stove and cooked and lived out of my van and just traveled and went to different places and stayed with different people, those that I met. And for 4 years, that was my life. And I wrote about that. And my second book, called When the Evening Dies, describes
Mhm.
all my adventures and
Everything is
the
described
poems
there.
that I read. Yeah.
Okay, I would
and the
really,
poems
really
and
like
my
to read this
awakening.
book.
Yeah, sure.
If you could give me a copy of this book, that would be amazing. Um,
Yeah, I can do that there. I only have a few copies left, but I certainly will
you
hook
don't have
you
it
up.
in a PDF or anything like that.
Yeah, I do actually. I can provide it in PDF, but you know, and so and I am at some point going to republish, but I just haven't taken the time to do all that kind of stuff.
And how old are
And
you
some of
now?
this is I'm 47 now.
Oh, 47. Okay. Mhm.
Yes, but I
So you're
do
born
recommend that people do
you're
that
born
kind of
almost
thing.
in in the end of the 60s,
70,
1970,
1970.
right?
Yeah, that's when I was born.
And you were born in Atlanta as well. Born and raised
Augusta, Georgia.
Augusta. Okay, in Georgia. Okay,
Right.
right. Did you have any before you read Castaneda? Did you have any? Were you already aware of the Sweat Lodge tradition? Did you hear any kind of oral histories from family members from your ancestry?
No, not really. At that time, there was that great alignment called the harmonic convergence that happened in 1988 when I was 18 years old, and there was a place here in Atlanta called Little Five Points where it was a place of alternative truth, the place where a bunch of hippies and different people came together to start like a cultural revolution, and all these different hippie stores and ethnic food places and all that came up. It was a eclectic cultural center of different types of people and different types of, well, anyway, so all this knowledge started coming forth, and there was this one particular bookstore called Crystal Blue. They sold crystals and sold all kind of different things, just very eclectic things, stones, incenses, things like that,
That
and
people would
alternative
associate to
truth
kind
books.
of new age.
Yeah, it was totally new age. But anyway, so all
Hmm.
this was coming forth, and I had a friend that was very uh, in tune with the native peoples, and did like the sweat lodges and everything. And there was this one girl that we used to hang out with. She was part of the Deer Tribe Medicine Society, and so she was really involved with the shamanic path and studying herbs and plants and things of that nature. And so we were all pursuing together um, this kind of pathway where we were embracing the native ways and native peoples and native traditions, and just the respect for the creation and the recognition that everything was alive and demanded or should be given respect, from the macrocosm to the microcosm, that we should respect life and honor everything, both the female and male, and all genders, all colors, all races of people. And so, following that pathway, that's what I was turned on to, doing sweat lodges and to studying and seeking and doing Vision Quest directly. And I began to read all the Carlos Castaneda series and about the apprenticeship between Don Juan and Carlos Castaneda, and so I wanted to seek that out in my own life. But what I discovered in doing so is that, more so than even seeking out a human teacher or somebody that could, like a medicine man or a novel or something of that nature,
Hmm.
we could develop relationship directly with the creation, with God, without having to go through an intermediary or take on some religion in order to understand that we could go directly to the source. So
Hmm.
that's what I did, and that's what I developed in my life, was a relationship with the Creator. And so, the truths and the knowledge and all that just came after it, but it was a willingness to go out on my own and to do it differently and to break away from the normality of routine that allowed spirit to enter into my life. And I think that people that want to really do that for, some they'll go to a monastery in India or the Far East or whatever in order to break away and to show um, a willingness to be different and to relate with creation differently. And I think that when you do that in your life, the Most High and the Spirit recognizes that, and when you create the space for them to come forth and interact with you, that certainly Spirit will do so. That they are developing really relationship with each one of us and speaking to us on all kind of supernatural levels all the time. It's just that people don't recognize that, don't acknowledge that, and mostly ignore that in their lives. And so that's why those kind of relationships are very rare when they should be and could be commonplace.
So it was after this moment, the harmonic conversion moment, and that you started spending
I
time.
decided to break away.
Then that's when you broke away, and yeah, I mean, remember last time we were talking about the DNA and dreams that
Right.
the anthropologists talk about, that they try to study their religion and they say, hey man, I cannot tell you about religion. You have to figure out by yourself, and it's about dreaming as well.
Yes.
Being
Yes.
they refuse to talk about it. It's
Right.
prescribe a set of rules, or but they say you have to be a good dreamer. It, it's kind of a metaphor for the whole thing. Of course, it's not a rule, but I guess
Right.
it's speaking to what you're just talking about. Did you notice? I mean, I guess it must be in your book, some of the stuff that you mentioned. But uh, did you have prophetic dreams, particular dreams that you remember that started giving you insight?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I've talked about this, and yes, I've written about it. That I became a lucid dreamer,
Right.
and that was one of the things that allowed me to, because once I learned how to wake up in my dream, I learned that the dream was a very powerful medium that allowed you to speak directly to spirit if you so chose to use it as such. And that God really, all through the generations of humanity, has utilized dreams and the dream space to speak to individuals and humanity. And that even the shamans and the priests and the prophets of old, you know,
Sorry, it
utilized
just broke up for a little second. Even the shamans and the priests.
priests,
Wait,
prophets.
wait a second. Are you on the internet? Sorry. Can you cut it off, please? Yeah. Sorry, because my partner here, she might be on the internet, and that's gonna maybe slow us down, having this kind of poor network connection icon for some reason. Um, as you're saying, the the connection,
The
dream connection.
as right throughout history, we see that the Most High God has spoken to individuals, prophets, priests, the apostles in dream, utilize the dream space as a means to connection, relationship. So dreaming, I think, is important as spiritual. Um, this which place an emphasis on it, and that about that they become uh, natural dreamers, and most people in societies, they wake up and because any inkling of, and they go on about in the last we did, many cultures completely emphasize their dream, and that the first thing they will do is ask the tribe if anybody had a significant dream, and then
Mhm.
they bring that person before the medicine people, the elders of the tribe, and they discuss um, the dream and try to understand and interpret it. And then a lot of them will even utilize that dream to construct what they are going to do for that particular day. For instance,
Hmm.
the some a hunter may have a dream of capturing, or
Oh
killing
yeah,
some animal or something of nature, and then they'll totally create the space or the circumstance to have that dream be fulfilled,
right. Yeah,
knowing
this
that
this is
yeah,
quite a thing in anthropology that's widely studied. The premonitory dreams of hunters, especially in North America.
no,
There's I'm not sure you know this guy called Hugh Brody. Hugh Brody.
no, I don't.
He has a book called Maps and Dreams.
Okay, right on,
Um,
very cool.
I think he's one of the best anthropologists there is, even though he's not that big. He's done a lot of very good
Yeah,
work, and it's this book Maps and Dreams is one of his best books. Is quite interesting and talks exactly about that. They are able to dream with the particular animal, and usually in cultures that they also believe that the animals are giving themselves up to them, and then there needs to be a reciprocity there. They
right,
cannot just take any
right,
animal any way they want,
right.
or go trophy hunting or things like that.
Right. And so you see and recognize that, again, having that respect and that thanksgiving to the creation and to nature and to the animal, allowing us to feed upon them and sustain our has a different having a direct the and the creation. So come from a place and Thanksgiving in like we pray over our meals, over everything that we put into our bodies, water, whatever, just to show gratitude to the Most High God for every blessing, because everything is a blessing. And when you live that way, then you have different reality and different unfolding and different miracle occurrence every day. And you know, and so I think that people that relate and with God in such a manner that they have profoundly deeper insight and understanding for what this life is really about and what we're here really to do.
So would you say that, and now we're getting some sort of poor connection? I'm not very happy about it. I don't know if it is because of can you hear me well?
Yeah, I hear you, Chris.
It's just coming from your side, maybe. It's kind of breaking up. It's a little bit annoying because I want to hear what you're saying.
Because we have to,
Should we call? Should we start again or have a restart here? Shall we try?
yeah,
Okay, because I don't want you to be speaking and I'm not listening to you. That's
not
not good.
getting it. Yeah. Okay,
Okay?
cool.
All right, cool. I'll
All
call it
right.
now.
So,
Hey,
hey, bro.
hey, man. Oh, that sounds
Much.
better. Sounds better.
Okay.
So, I was gonna ask you, um, when you became a lucid dreamer, did you, how long before or after you became a, before, sorry, how long after you became a lucid dreamer did you start waking up for the flash, or you didn't until somebody challenged you, right?
Right. No, I've
Did
been a
or did it
lucid dreamer for a
explain
very
like,
long time.
yeah, but is it possible that while you're a lucid dreamer and then you're seeing things and you're flying or you going to places and talking to people and whatever you're doing there, that after you realize the revelation of the flat earth, did some of those experiences make more sense?
Yeah, I think so. I can tell you about dreams right off. When I used to in my dreams, I had to learn to control my excitement because I found that getting emotionally or overwhelmed by just being conscious within a dream, that
Mm.
you will return to your body unless you learn to calm yourself, relax yourself, and continue breathing and act like nothing ever happened. You know, you have to almost fool yourself into not getting excited. And so that I had to do and continue breathing in order to sustain the dream. And after initially getting over such excitement, uh, I learned to do different things as far as exploring. And so, one of the things that I always remembered about well, my early lucidity moments is that I always saw the Earth as a plane, like a flat plane, and not really understanding why or questioning or even really even thinking about that. And then there was another dream where I, this was after I had learned to fly in my dreams, because one of the things that I realized right off, because it was one of the things that I first tried to do, was to fly in my dreams. And I used to actually flap my arms like a chicken to try to move around in dream space, which is completely wrong. I mean, that's not the way that you propel yourself. And so it's kind of funny now, looking back now as far as the evolution of dreaming and coming to understanding the dynamics of it. But I realized is that we had to project our will, that you utilize your mind and you utilize your focus and your intent in order to not only move about within a dream, but also to create within a dream. And so one of the things that I first tried to do was to go out to the moon. And I remember focusing and concentrating on the moon. And this is, after I'm completely conscious within a dream and I'm sustaining it. And I began to fly swiftly out to the moon and gaining rapid speed and then seeing again, the plane of the earth, retreat from me, that I became scared, and that's what brought me back to my body. But I do remember those two. And the other thing with the moon is it was smaller than I had expected in coming to it and going towards it, and not like what they teach us as far as the moon being 1/5 the size of the Earth and the Earth being 108 times smaller than the sun across the diameter. I mean, just these kind of perceptions and these kind of things are completely flawed. And so, looking back, I realize that now. But no, I had no inkling or even consideration, because I've been a lucid dreamer for a very long time, since the time that I first began my journeys and living in a van and traveling about. Because as I said, when you make yourself available to spirit and you knock, you seek, and you're trying to find, then God will come to you. God will meet you more than halfway. That they have always been waiting for us to to seek them out and to want to have relationship with them. And so it's like when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, and that's kind of what happened for me. And as I said, I wasn't utilizing an intermediary. I wasn't going through a church or a guru or a person or a religion or, a certain book in the study of it. I was seeking God with all the intent of my heart, and he, recognizing that, came to me in supernatural manner. And the communication that we have with spirit is on that level. It's on a supernatural level, and God can utilize anything within the creation to either answer or share sign or direct us or guide us or you know agree or show that he agrees with our choices or our lives, the things that we're choosing to do. And so he can communicate with us on many different levels utilizing his creation. And it shows you that when he does that, that it has to be God, because only he and as far as the Godhead, the Trinity, only they can use the creation in such way to communicate with us and speak to us directly. And so that's how you know without question that you're talking with and communicating with God. Because I mean, Even the angels or the fallen angels, they don't have the power to set, whether it's a lightning bolt or a streaking shooting star, or the appearance of a supernatural, some kind of strange bird or creature, that anything like that. I mean, God communicates with us on different levels. Even the wind He can use to give you answer.
So you believe that this has something to do with vibration or inner harmony and resonance? Do you think that that has something to do with how things work in those
Well, yeah,
connections?
I think everything is at its core, that everything is light, sound, energy, vibration, force, that the source of life is the Godhead, and that everything is that, that at its purest level, God and Christ and the Holy Spirit are light, the highest ethereal light one can imagine. And then as that light steps down in vibration, it takes on um, it takes on dimensionality. It takes on form and shape. It comes in different density. That starting from light, which is imperishable and immortal, that it will step down until it becomes what we see in the physical world with the wood, stone, or anything that has density, that
Mm-hmm.
is an element and that we see as physical form. But
Mm-hmm.
essentially, everything is light and part of the fabric of the Godhead. Otherwise, it
Mm-hmm.
would not exist.
So as far as like Christians go, and even within the flat Earth, you're quite unconventional. Then you have a very different approach, would you say? Even though I think that the Christians I've spoken to so far, they don't seem to be locked into a church. They seem to be all freed from a particular cult, say like
Hmm.
Catholic
Right.
or Protestant. But would you say that some of the things you're saying, for example, that you should accept all genders, you should accept all kinds of different people. Some people don't see that. Don't see that. I with you. Like they wouldn't agree with you, and they call themselves Christians as well. You know what I'm saying? I'm just trying
Yeah,
to get into the point. Like
right.
there's differences between what people are believe is true, or you know what I'm saying. And your
Yeah,
vision seems to be very eclectic, and you're searching for all your life. You've been looking at things, and then you have your
right,
own way of finding out things, which is through an experience, which is a dream experience. So
right,
and that's that. What I would call that unconventional. I don't think I've spoken to anybody who is aware of these things. And even though I've had lucid dreams, and they turn out to be prophetic, they turn out to uh, show. I mean, 19 years. I think my partner now. We play a lot of music together. We're really happy together. We I dreamt of her like when I was my mid 20s or something, and that gave me a lot of trouble because I thought it was kind of some sort. I knew it was real, but it was some sort of trick because I was. How is that going to happen if it? You know what I'm saying? It's like something that's way ahead in the future, and they're trying to tell me, don't worry about it. You know.
uh-huh,
And there were other things as well. There are other kinds of dreams that I had when I started doing some concert when I was 19. I had an experience, also kind of strong lucid dream experience. That those never leave. They're I never forgot what
right,
happened. Right, it was very vivid, more than so much more than a normal memory that I may forget from the routine that I was living. It was out
right.
of the routine. Would you say that you are kind of unconventional, that you accept some of these other um, more of a Native American position as well?
Well, I'm absolutely unconventional, and that's one of the problems for a lot of people,
Right.
as far as those that celebrate and follow organized Christianity or organized way of being or any kind of organized religion. I
Right.
don't limit myself or mold myself or allow myself to be boxed in by a certain religion or their particular beliefs. My relationship is with the Godhead directly. And even though I know Christ as Savior Messiah, and I do know the Bible to be the prophetic word of the Most High God, uh, you know, and I am a Christian, I'm not locked into that particular definition or what most people accept as being the characteristics of such definition. I'm simply a truth seeker that has come to know God directly and experienced the divine for myself. And so, whatever you call that, most people reference that a mystic, all throughout the times and the ages.
Mhm.
But, I don't limit myself with particular title or definition because some people, they'll put negative characteristics and negative connotations to it. And so I am my own person and I've learned truth in my own way. And I share that with those that are also seeking in truth for themselves independently and individually in similar manner. That a lot of people that do that kind of thing, they are also brought to similar discernment and share similar revelation. And so truth is truth no matter, who finds it or where, that there's an underlying truth with all things if you learn to recognize it and if God gives you a discernment on how all things tie together, because again, there is a giant story which unifies everything in presentation. But most people don't have knowledge or are able to unlock that riddle to see the jigsaw puzzle of truth for what it really is. And it's because most, truly don't seek it out and don't ever really, um, as far as going to the wilderness and seeking God directly. Most don't do that. They read books or they go to a particular church, they share worship with a particular group, but they will never go to the wilderness and for 4 days fast and cry out and seek an experience with the Spirit. Um, there are those that do that, but again, we are very few and far in between. And so individuals like us, you can't mold or lock them into a particular group. Even though most people will consider us, um, as being conspiracy theorists uh, or even they call me Gnostic, always it's Gnostic. Oh, he's a Gnostic or whatever. And so whatever definitions people put on me, that that's their choice, that's their option, that's their opinion, but I don't let it define me, and I don't have affiliations with religions or peoples or particular books or ideologies. I have relationship with the Creator and His creation, and with truth, and so that's my way.
Is it something that you feel rather than something that you can actually or should be putting into words? I guess, but I guess you also you make a living speaking.
Right, and writing books and sharing
Mhm.
the truths that I've discovered. Um, Well, again, it's the difference between one that goes to church, 1 day a week in order to be holy or righteous and to feel that for moments in a temporary type of way, and one that has changed their life in every moment to be church, and that is now living prayer rather than going somewhere to pray.
Mhm.
And that when you make that distinction and learn to be that example as Christ was to us, that that differentiation, that utilization of your intent and who you choose to be and how you are, that makes your relationship with the creator and with the creation completely different. And for myself, I've learned to be genuine and to live that truth and to serve humanity through love and also to share the knowledge and the discernment, the so-called conspiracy theories or whatever, and in unlocking the matrix and helping people to decipher the illusion parading as truth, that doing these kind of things, um, whatever you call that kind of a person, that's what I am. And in writing and putting together all the ancient manuscripts and sharing them, because we do that through our publishing company,
Mm-hmm.
sacredwordpublishing.net, that I'm a
Mm-hmm.
scribe unto the Most High. And that's what I know myself to be. And that's what I choose to do. And I service the kingdom and, the Most High in whatever way He chooses to allow me and to have me do. And
How long
that's
have you been doing this? And I mean, when you came back after your 4 years, how was it? How did you cope with coming back? Where did you come back to? Did you go back and got a conventional job? Did you start selling your books, or how did you? What happened after that? Because you had a transformative experience. First, it started in '88. Then the 4 years. You must
right.
have completely changed, and then you
Yeah,
came
I
back.
did. Well, what happened is that I was in an accident where we lost our brakes on a mountain road and went off a cliff and
Mhm.
almost died. And I became paralyzed then. And after, I basically had to put together all the pieces of what was my shattered self. And so that's what I did for a few years in learning and transitioning into disability and living like that with paralysis. And so that was my forced, as far as forced to come back to the world. Because before that time, I was separated. I was living in a van. I traveled and lived and stayed with people, and I lived a very beautiful and awesome, incredible life. In the winters, I would snowboard in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and teach martial arts. And in the spring and summer, I was going to a massage school in Northern California at a place called the Heartwood Institute. And so I was learning things like how to affect people and to heal them through massage and shiatsu and deep Swedish and Esalen. And we did drum circles and sweat lodges and ate organic food and grew our own food and, things like that. I was learning how to be in a different way.
Mhm.
Um, but breaking my neck forced me to come back to the world and to have to live and to adapt again um, in a way that I had not wanted to, and here now I was forced to not only be in this 9 to 5 world that I had escaped from, but now I was completely dependent upon it, as far as for my care and for assistance and also supplies and all those kind of things, and so then I got a scholarship to go back to school, and I had to reestablish myself and also overcome, this whole transitioning into a different way of being, which that's my third book is the title is called A Different Way of Being. And it was my whole transition into the world of, living with paralysis. But it was in reconsidering and having the time to introspect and to study and to write about my life and what I had just went through and the things that I had learned, that I began to embrace and to study, again, all the ancient manuscripts that I could find from all over the world. And in doing that, I really learned about the prophetic word as far as the Hebrew manuscripts and the Arabic texts, and in also, Hindu, Native American, whatever, that there was underlying
Mhm.
truth within all of them, and that there was
Mhm.
basically the same story being revealed.
So
But one of the things,
Sufi literature and Chinese, Japanese, everything.
everything, yeah,
Yeah.
there's a truth.
Oh yeah.
Like, with the Sumerian people talking about the Anunnaki that came down from the heavens, the Chinese speaking about the dragons, and that seeded their culture. It's the same story. The Kreta Mutwa, and this South African Sangoma, a
Right.
medicine man, they speak about the same thing, the Chitta Uli, they call them. But it's
Right.
basically the same story. And so when you understand that, And then again, I was studying about the prophetic word, which were a lot of the Hebrew manuscripts and the story of what I thought all to be foolishness as far as the Bible and the stories of Adam and Eve and the bloodlines and the lineages that came about, their war with the serpent. But I found out that there was an underlying truth with all of these things, and it fit together with the oral traditions that were being cited and spoken about and shared worldwide. And so that's when the Most High really had me piece together the truth of our ancient past and our history, and to understand who these fallen angels were and how their involvement and interdiction into this world has led us to where we are now. But I was able to recognize that, all throughout the ages, they have been involved with humanity, that they were here even before us, and that they had a very evil um, aspect to them, which, most people can't make sense of that. And they think that um, the ancient cultures were way far advanced, both not only technologically but spiritually, which there's an actual deeper, sinister truth to that. And the fact is that a lot of these advanced cultures and advanced people, they had abomination involved in the institution of their religions, that they sacrificed people, that they drank blood, they were involved in cannibalism, these kind of things. And so we can't make sense of, in looking back at it, how it all ties together.
Yeah, I
And
know.
that's
I know
why.
a little bit about Roman stuff because I read Latin and I studied
uh,
a lot of this literature. And from the position of some of the people who I consider to be critical thinkers of their time in ancient Rome, they were they felt like those things that you're mentioning when they were happening in different cults. They felt that those things were abominations as well. They
right,
did not
right,
follow those kinds of religions.
yeah,
Like for example, the Stoics, um, and even the Epicureans, which I think they're stereotyped later. Like if you say now Epicurean, people think that these are hedonistic people, that they're just it's all about sex and sort of just having pleasure all the time, and that's a complete stereotype of what they're actually doing. I mean, if you
uh-huh,
read Lucretius's On the Nature of Things, is a book about love, and Venus is his goddess, but they
uh-huh,
call him a materialist. It's quite
uh-huh,
funny. It's like he is portrayed as a materialist, but his whole book begins with the coming of Venus, which is not sex. It's not sex. It's love.
uh-huh,
And that is one of the things that he talks about. There is tranquility, friendship, and no difference between women and men. No difference. No need for possessions. He really
uh-huh,
attacks the cult of materialism, which
right,
is
right,
that's the funny twist there, because he's
uh-huh,
completely against greed and jealousy, especially these guys, Epicurus as well,
uh-huh,
but they've been stereotyped, in
yeah,
my opinion, because I
yeah,
read all this stuff, and friendship is one of the most important values,
uh-huh,
and having some sort of autonomy. There's another guy called Columella, and he wrote a treatise on agriculture, it, because and this is a Republican Roman, so it's like before, just at the time of Christ. And he wrote because he saw that people in the city were going completely wrong direction. They didn't know where food came from. They weren't connected to nature, and he wanted to leave a legacy, explaining how you can live off a farm and how to take care of bees and different kinds of plants and the diseases of plants can get. A very detailed kind of manual about husbandry and taking care of animals and everything, that starts with this critique of the fall of civilization. It sounds like something written recently, but it's not.
uh-huh,
And I find that it's interesting. He cites like the so ancient the ancient Romans for him, which were alive maybe 400 years before him, because Rome by then had around 700 years. These guys, when they had to defend Rome, they would join the army. And as soon as they try to give them power, say, now you have to rule, they say, oh no, I'm going back to the farm. Are you crazy? I'm not going to be here. It's like Cato, I guess, is one of these guys.
Yeah.
Um, they're like, no, I'm living off the land. This is what's important, is taking care of yourself and living in peace. And but they had to defend their area when they had to, when it was absolutely imperative. But there is virtue at that time that it doesn't go in line with these cults that were also existing, right? So um, yeah, it was a very it was usually people don't think it is as diverse as it actually was, if you know what I'm saying,
Right.
in terms of ways of living. Like sometimes people say,
Right.
oh, Rome and a gladiator and all this stuff, like all that kind
Uh-huh.
of gore, and it's not really. And the people who, even Juvenal, who was a satire writer, he was, and people at his time, this is when the Colosseum finally comes around and they're killing people in the Colosseum. A lot of people were horrified. And most of the writing that survives is very much against all those customs that were horrible that they had,
Hmm.
which is right. And I think in every age, just like we're talking about, control from government control and greed and destruction and how they maintain poverty so they can have control over people, maintain a poverty of mind as well, right? A poverty of knowledge. Nobody, people are just locked into their cars, going up and down and getting, especially in the states where you have uh, people with very poor health, right? Eating processed foods and living an unhealthy lifestyle and thinking that they're having a great time by design, I think. Right? They don't want people to be free and to have those quests and to live out in nature. People would be doing that if they knew that that's a much better way of living, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And you see that again throughout the ages from the very beginning. You have Cain building the first city and naming it after his son, and then setting up and establishing weights and measures and government and
Mm-hmm.
control, central banking, all these different things. It goes back to the very beginning. They figured out a way to impose the matrix upon people in order to not only control them but fleece them and have them work for them and to take advantage of their efforts. And so it's always been that way. But again, it's not on accident that all this came about. The fallen ones have known and have orchestrated the whole thing. The agenda of the New World Order is nothing new. And the establishment, the centralization of power, the establishment, the use of weights and measures or money or fiat or anything of that nature, the control of barter, international banking, all those kind of things were concepts that Satan has utilized since the very beginning in order to manipulate and control the masses. And we've had the children of Adam trying to establish this agrarian, just really living off the land and farming and domestication of animals and shepherding and all that, living with the creation and out there in rural places. That these two ways of life have been at odds with one another since the very beginning, and this is why God wants us to have direct relationship with him through his creation. And whereas Satan wants us to work and be controlled by the matrix in order to keep us separated from God and not even have knowledge of his existence or or have the time to seek and to look into the deeper aspects of who we are, why we are, and what all this is really about. And so,
Mm. And I mean, you grew up in a generation of a space generation, right? What people call space age. because it's right
Hmm.
then, right? You're born right
Right.
at the beginning of this
Right.
stuff. How were you able to deconstruct this programming?
It was very simple. Well, again, I came to the knowledge very quickly in examining flat Earth that not only were we not moving at the speed of sound or as fast as a bullet shot from a gun, as they tell us, um, but
But the space station, I think, is 22 times the speed of a bullet. It's 22 times the speed of sound.
yeah, it's something ludicrous like that. And they tell us, there's 20,000 satellites up there too, and
Mhm.
and yet not one has ever run into each other, not one has hit the so-called space station or whatever. They don't even have
Mhm.
to deviate from their natural orbit at
Mhm.
any time,
Now they
and
say
nobody's
they
keeping up
do,
with all this.
but they say they do, but you never see anybody driving it. You never see anybody in
Right,
the driver's seat of that thing.
right.
It's
Hmm.
always just kind of a TV studio type of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah, fully. It's all just falling and maintains orbit
Or they're
because
in
of
the
that.
swimming
It's
pool outside doing nothing, which just seems to be what they do. They just hang around, cork a screw or something.
Say that again.
I mean, they're EVAs, so-called EVAs. They go outside of the station. They get a,
Uh-huh.
they use it. You know, they pull a screw here and they do something that
Right,
you
right.
never
Yeah,
know
yeah.
exactly what they're doing.
That's supposed to get us to believe in, space and spacewalks and the technology. Yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
I grew up during all that, but it was easy to recognize that what they had told us about the cosmology was totally not the way it was. And then even just looking at the dynamics of satellites and looking at the the different angles of light during the moon missions and how it was that they can't get through the Van Allen radiation belts now. They told us that they were able to accomplish all this with 60s technology, that they were able to get to the moon and back,
Yeah,
and
some
they
people
can't
say that
replicate
these
that
Van
now. I
Allen
mean,
belts are not that dangerous. I heard somebody trying to explain that away as some channel, and she was saying, "Oh yeah, it's just getting blasted by a little bit of a microwave." But I think
yeah, sure.
it may not even it might be something to do with the firmament or something else. It might be a barrier that's
That's what I think. Yeah.
right.
Absolutely, that's what I think as well. Um, and but again, these kind of things we never even second guessed or reconsidered. The fact that the thermosphere is supposed to be between 3 and 4,000 degrees,
Oh yeah.
uh, and there's no way that satellites built with the components that they say they are composed of could even survive in those kind of extreme temperatures.
Mhm.
And so all these things, and then the as far as the natural properties of water, how we ever believed that there could be oceans, curved oceans, or that the Earth has rotundity. How does water adhere to a ball,
Yeah, and that
even with
everybody believed
so-called
that,
natural
eh?
gravity?
But you did believe
Yeah,
this.
fully.
But it is
Yeah.
interesting because how old are you when this? It's not so long ago, right? This is only three,
Oh,
four
it was
years
three
ago.
years ago. Yeah, in 2015 that
And I
I
mean,
came to this realization.
it's interesting because usually, somebody who's had a longer life. I mean, I think it was now I'm 41, so people come set in their ways and their beliefs usually, but to be able to go through that conversion so quickly, like so many people did, I think it's kind of a remarkable thing that
Right, right.
there are people open to that kind of dramatic shift.
Yes. Well, it just shows you that truth really can turn your world not upside down, but make it flat. And so when you understand truth, you just have to accept it and then move on. And then having such a large paradigm shift, you then adapt to it and try to fill in the gaps of what you thought to be truth previously. We're all trying now to better understand the creation and the way that it works. But just the natural properties of water is that it has to be contained within a basin, and whenever it's collected and gathered in pool, it will also always take a settle in a flat, level, horizontal uh,
Mhm.
way and manner, and create this sea level. And so that's what we have. there's one sea level for the entire plane of the Earth, and the way that the sun, uh, that the way that it works, the dynamics of the even the sunset, where we see the rays fanning out in wide spectrum, and that when we're looking at the sunset over water, we'll see an unbroken stream of light, a pillar of light from our where we are on the beach all the way out to the sun and where it's at over the ocean. And so this shows us that there's no curvature, there's no broken line, and that the distance between us and the sun, where it's setting in the water, is completely level and flat. And that's why we see this unbroken pillar of light. And so these kind of things absolutely confirm that the Earth is a flat plane. The fact that there's no curvature and you can see things like lighthouses, islands, statues like the Statue of Liberty, monuments, cityscapes at distances where the supposed curvature of the Earth should hide them. I mean,
Hmm.
that absolutely affirms that there is no curvature. And anybody can check that quickly too in one day.
So it is hidden, but not really.
No, it's not. It's hidden in plain sight.
Right.
But it's obvious. It can't be hidden, and it only takes one experiment to determine that what we have been told about the shape of the earth and the movement of it, that all of that is false. It's all conjecture, it's all lies. And that's the real conspiracy theory, is that we ever believed the earth was a ball or a sphere or a globe, because the dynamics of water itself prove otherwise.
Did you look into the kind of Easter eggs kind of idea in like Hollywood movies and things like that? Do you look into that kind of symbology? Did you look at Kubrick's The Shining, for example, and how it tells the story of Apollo 11?
Yeah, uh-huh. Yeah, absolutely. It's not difficult at all to realize that the moon missions and the so-called photo shoots were all staged. I mean, even the fact that they supposedly had this rover on the moon, where did they put it? I mean, these kind of things. It's very simple for us to determine that the moon missions and everything, all the photo and video evidence of it is all fake.
And the rover
And
has the precise proportions of a jeep stripped down.
right, exactly, yeah, exactly. And where did they carry it in their pocket? I mean, did
Yeah,
they fit it
they
in the
have some
lunar
sort of
module?
they have some sort of excuse where they put it in the lunar module.
Right, right. But those are things that, when you really examine, it's very easy to determine that all of that was fake. And so, when NASA is lying to us and they're nothing but an extension of Hollywood, um, you better understand what we're contending with, because that's how large the scope of the lie is, that they've set up huge organizations to just bleed the American taxpayer and world taxpayer of all these funds, all the money that's given to NASA, and it's all a lie. I mean, and people come to that realization, it forces them really quickly to have to reassess all they thought they knew of as truth or reality.
A lot of people get depressed at that point. They go through a
Well,
moment
yeah,
of kind of a real tough moment there for some people.
I think what is difficult for people, especially those that have never examined conspiracy or looked into like the events of 9/11, is that most people believe government and trust government and government agencies. They
Mhm.
believe the media. They believe the stories. They believe Hollywood. They believe the history books. And when they find out all of that is a lie, and that you can't really trust anything as to truth, then yeah, it's depressing. I mean, your entire reality is shattered, and everybody you thought you could trust, you realize has been lying to you directly to your face. Even our parents, our friends, our pastors, our ministers, our teachers, everybody, everybody has been lying to us.
right? Sometimes unwillingly, of course.
Well,
But I
yeah,
guess it's
most
a
of the
thing
time
that we
unwillingly.
realize as a child. I mean, if you're a child that asks a lot of questions and you start asking why to a lot of things, because kids do that. They're like, oh, why this and why that, and it really quickly reaches a limit where the parents really don't know how to answer and what to deal with,
Right,
how to deal with it
right.
with that kind of curiosity, and they try to put that down and have them accept.
Absolutely, right.
And this seems to be the case, and I'm not sure I shared that with you. There's actually a piece of mainstream research by a couple of psychologists from the 90s, I think it's 98 if I'm not mistaken, that they look into how kids are taught the idea that they're living on a globe, and they
Uh-huh.
actually investigated this, and
Oh, wow. That's very
they
cool.
yeah, it's I can send that to you. And I got that from an anthropology book. This professor in anthropology is looking into this because Heidegger, who's one of the most famous philosophers of all time, at least in philosophy, who wrote this book called Being in Time, when they went to the lunar, they had a lunar orbiter that took a picture of the Earth as a ball, supposedly, and they showed it to him. He said, "No way, that is not the Earth." And this professor wrote the book is like, how did Heidegger deny this? And he wouldn't accept it because he believes that we are beings in the world in a constant state of becoming and unfolding,
Uh-huh.
and he would not accept that we are on the surface of a ball. He was like, "There's absolutely no way. There's no place for humans. There's no place for life in that ball." He said, and that's in the 50s.
Oh, wow.
And I thought it was very interesting, and uh, this 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 paper I told you about, kids resist the idea that they're on a globe, that they're
Right,
supposedly on a
right.
globe. They resist that until
Yeah.
it's beaten into them. And
Uh-huh.
but the researchers they talk about that, but they obviously they don't come out as flat earthers. I don't think they are. And you see that in the literature that I've been looking at, in academic literature, they admit that for us the reality is that we live on a flat place,
Right.
but that is a naive belief that kids believe, and they have to be told otherwise. They have to be told the sophisticated idea that
Uh-huh.
we're not a spinning ball. But they
Right.
resist that as much as they can until they are forced to adapt to the what these researchers call the socially acceptable model,
Uh-huh. Right.
because otherwise they're considered cooks, and they probably through this process they're told no, it's crazy to believe the earth is flat,
Yes,
even though
yes.
it's you cannot feel it spinning. It's spinning. Kids are probably saying, but it doesn't spin. But da 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 da. You know how kids are,
Right.
and
Right.
boom, they beat it right out of them. And I think that's probably part of the process of then becoming indoctrinated into the system where
Right. Yep.
you're told how to think instead of trying to figure it out
Right.
by yourself.
Yeah, kids naturally know the truth and they realize that the earth is flat. There's nothing to suggest from what we visually see and how we interact with the creation to suggest otherwise. Nobody's ever seen a curved body of water or curvature or, eh, anything of that nature or the earth spinning or moving through space. I mean, looking at a flag, you can see that the earth is not moving. And most of the times it's completely listless. It's not even moving. So we're not moving at 5 miles an hour, much less 1,037 miles an hour. So, yeah, it's most people realize this, but again, it shows that the indoctrination, we're brainwashed into believing a lie rather than coming to know more as to about truth and the dynamics of the creation and the realities of it, which is why in the work that I've done with regard to the cosmology, reassessing and in decrypting the Book of Enoch, I show that that book most certainly had to have been inspired because it shows that the Earth is a flat plane and that the sun is moving back and forth between the Tropic of Capricorn and Cancer over 6 months and then back the other way over 6 months, and that this is what causes the seasons and also the days to get longer and then shorter, and the seasons to go through a cycle of spring, summer, fall, winter. That all this is encoded and revealed within the Book of Enoch. And for the last 500 years, since we've embraced the Copernican heliocentric model, knowledge of how to understand this text has been lost.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah, and that
showing that,
that embracing is it was also gradual. It was not a thing that was just immediate and
oh, right.
instantaneous.
Yeah, fully.
Yeah.
Fully. Yeah, and the other thing that I come to learn in studying not only the Book of Enoch, the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries, but all the ancient traditions and all of the ancient manuscripts is that all of the ancient people knew that the earth was flat and that it was covered over by a firmament. And,
Yeah, I've been looking into that actually from the mainstream, not mainstream. I should not call it mainstream, but the literature I can find through my university databases, and the ancient Chinese, they had measured the dome. They had all kinds of measurements.
right,
I have a model that I was looking at, and for them it was completely flat. And they measured the stars. The Egyptians as well. I mean, it's in in this paper that I found by a woman who knows hieroglyphs, knows how to read the hieroglyphs, and actually she was complaining. She says also for the Egyptians, there's no world below. There's nothing below the earth, according to her, for the Egyptians in their manuscripts. And there is no spinning ball and all these other things. And she's complaining that modern scholars and people who has never actually looked into the hieroglyphs, never tried to learn how to read them, are actually projecting their modern astronomical understanding into the
right,
Egyptians. So it's kind
right,
of similar to what I guess it might be happening with this ancient alien theory
right,
that became
exactly,
so
yeah,
popular as a thing to say,
right,
humans can never build anything, they can never know anything for themselves, they can never figure anything out, so therefore aliens, right?
right, exactly, yes. That's exactly right. But again, even like understanding and deciphering how this ties together, the Copernican, Darwinian, heliocentric model ties together with what the Bible calls the strong delusion and the coming reign of the Antichrist, we see that even media and all the Marvel movies and all the superheroes and all of that,
Right.
they're trying to establish the premise that these supernatural beings created us long ago and that they're coming back to save us from ourselves. And so that's the lie that is being established, and that most people are buying into.
We're some
You
sort of
see,
genetic experiment.
right, that we were a genetic experiment, that the whole thing of the missing link,
Right.
between ape and man, that was the aliens creating us and jumping the gun on evolution.
Right. That's
And
not
so,
just that the theory is flawed and it makes no sense. It's just
right,
actually that
exactly.
they try to make excuses for the fact that it is well, I mean, Darwin, for all I know, and if you follow the rule that you should judge a tree by its fruits, I mean, I've been reading, I've been looking into some of it, and I actually thought I was reading actually the expression of emotion in animals and humans, and man, actually he calls him man, and another one of his not so well known books that's called The Descent of Man, which is quite wild, like the kinds of things he's claiming there.
Hmm.
While on the one hand, he would admit that animals have all kinds of emotions and things and some sort of rationality, he would then later make extremely sexist remarks. You know, say men are superior than women because of this and that, and that's inherited because of this and that, and then
Uh-huh.
racist remarks saying, yeah, but
Right,
the lowest savages and the lowest primitives, da 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 da
right,
da. And if somebody just speaks that way, I mean, they could not be unbiased scientist, right? It means that
right.
he's just embedded in the racism of his time,
Yes,
and
exactly.
I think, in my opinion, it's like a personal opinion, is that they have to. It's a collection of these British thinkers who have been to certain universities in Britain, specifically in England, who are supposed to be hailed as the masters of the universe. that people have to
Uh-huh.
follow. It's just because they're British, it seems to be. There has to be some sort of hierarchy in the world that they place themselves on top. So you get Darwin, you get Newton, you get Dawkins and Hawkins,
Right. Yeah.
right? These guys who, I mean, you read Hawkes's book, like Hawking's theory of everything and something like that. It is moronic. It's poorly written. It is almost like it's unbelievable that this guy could be making could be considered like such an incredible thinker, in my opinion. Because the whole
Right.
thing, it's just kind of like what it's. If you actually, if you compare, I know that a lot of people in flat Earth and other kind of conspiracy realms, they don't like Einstein, and they call him an idiot and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
I think that his book, and I have here the meaning of relativity. I was taking a look at that. He's of course he's making excuses and so on, but he's not so forceful. He seems to be compared to Hawkins, his much more reasonable. And Dawkins is, I mean, he's for me the I mean, he has a book called The Blind Watchmaker, in which
Uh-huh.
he goes on and on. We're trying to read it as like a comedy because we read around the table. Sometimes we actually haven't been doing it recently, but we read when we're cooking. And I was trying to read some of these books as kind of a comedy, and that nobody I know in anthropology actually likes Richard Dawkins. They think he's an idiot. But I was like, okay, we need to know, how they make their arguments because he's considered some sort of highly rational person. And one of his arguments for evolution is that you can, if you get the pieces of a jet airplane and throw them up completely disconnected enough times, that they would come together as a working jet plane.
That's ridiculous.
And he goes on and on with this.
Uh-huh.
And how is that publishable material? You know what I'm
Right,
saying?
right.
It's just like, what's going on here with these people?
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know what it is. I really don't know what it is. How they're being. What's the deal with these guys? They look weird, in my opinion. They give off a weird vibe. You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh. Well, again, in my opinion, it's the dark side, the forces aligned against us, that they are pushing and trying to promote a particular agenda, and they utilize these kind of people to do that. And so the lie is perpetuated by lie, on and on and on. And
Yeah, you see
people that,
the Carl Sagan, for example, is supposed to be another sage that they promote, right?
mhm.
And I mean, he's kind of more benign than some of the other ones in some ways, but I think it's interesting because if you read, I was looking at what people consider pseudoscience because I think it's a term of abuse. It's completely misused as a term. This idea of pseudoscience. It's
Uh-huh.
a claim. It's like saying I don't like you. Pseudoscience. It's like
Yeah, yeah.
it's just kind of. And I was looking at the Wikipedia list, and it is appalling the kind of things that they throw in there and who they believe are authorities to judge this, what is pseudoscience or not.
Uh-huh.
The fact that we live in a society that has such a thing as Wikipedia telling you how to think, I think is a little bit.
Right.
It's quite bizarre.
Yeah. Well, it's Orwell. It's totally 1984. I mean, they have established, the Facebook, the platform of control, and everybody uses it, and nobody second guesses it or questions it. And we're all just following in line, what most people are, as far as being sheeple and being slaves.
And how was it for you, like to bring the information to people? Did you have a lot of people that thank you for things? And how is the transformation for the people you know? And
Oh,
the
it's a paradigm shifting, absolutely. But the what I first recognized then, because I've been doing this work for a very long time now. But what I first realized is that most people were not receptive and were completely hostile. And then there was, again, the organized forces that come out and try to attack the messenger or to disinformation to try to muddy up the message or
Mhm.
discredit me or whatever.
Are you talking
That
about flat Earth
I
in particular, or
No,
okay, okay,
just truth in general.
yeah,
My first book was about the serpent seed and about these two bloodlines and this war being ongoing and ancient, and the forces of darkness certainly came out and targeted me ever since that time. And so I was blacklisted by a number of alternative truth broadcasts and people and radio personalities, and I've been in that camp ever since, and all the things I share as far as with truth, because again, I'm not a particular religion, I'm not a conventional or mainstream. I don't
hmm
follow anybody. I don't study from anybody. I basically read the ancient manuscripts, interpret them for myself, and allow my relationship with God to lead me in discernment and revelation. And so, because of that, I have no influence where I'm controlled, other than by God in doing the service and working on behalf of the kingdom. And so that's what I do, and I share truth. And no matter how bizarre or how weird or how strange it is, I open myself to the study of it. And when I research or look into or examine something, I enter into that pursuit with an open mind, and I study both sides of it until I can come to a knowledgeable conclusion to then make my stance with truth or it being a lie. And that's always been my way. And I've shared that through my radio broadcasts and the shows that I've done, and also the books that I write. And so the people that are now discovering me, which, for the most part, I've been largely attacked, criticized, and condemned. But there are a lot of people that, especially privately, they thank me for sharing and bringing forth the revelations that I have. And even though a lot of them are scared to publicly affiliate or align themselves to me or to take stance with me, they do share the profundity of the knowledge and affecting their lives, and how much it has established and helped them to develop relationship with God and to understand His Word and to understand how it all ties together. With the ancient times, the ancient mysteries, discoveries, and mythologies, and how they tie together with the biblical narrative and the whole thing of pre-existence and this bloodline war and all these things, because again, I teach and share truth in a way that is unique. The, I, there's nobody else like me out there doing what I do.
yeah. Well, I think that there's nobody else like anybody else. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, fully, absolutely.
It's like
But
kind
a
of.
lot of people follow, and group
Oh yeah,
themselves.
oh yeah, as well. Yeah, I lived in a very small community for 2 years. Had 23,000 people, and there people really value one another's idiosyncratic, ways. Being they're very
Yeah,
accepting. They are, and they don't really follow a kind of hierarchy. This is the richest person, let's everybody, oh, let's go after them. Or they value almost everybody, you know in a
yeah,
way that is very different than what I've seen in the city, in some cities, and even in academia, of course, because you have a lot of people who are, um, like a brown nosers. It's like, if
right.
you really
Suck
know what I'm
ups,
saying.
yeah,
Yeah, suck ups, because of the prestige and the hierarchy and so on. And there I realized, everybody is as each person is as foreign to you as much as you don't actually get to know them, because everybody's got a particular story,
right.
and once you get into realizing who they are, you start valuing them for just being put here to go through a lot of experiences that, are never always very pleasant, you know Everybody
Uh-huh.
goes to. I think a lot of people go to through trauma, and that the this kind of system we have tries to drive that away. That kind of empathetic way of seeing other people is also something that's been taken away by this kind of mainstream world.
Yeah, absolutely.
The
Absolutely. And
media.
again, it's not by accident, it's on purpose. And that's the thing that we don't understand is most people don't recognize how organized evil really is. And that, the war against us is on so many levels for a reason. They are literally trying to decimate us through the air, the chemtrails, the vaccines, our food, air, the water, everything, with the lead paint and children's toys, things like that, which most people think are just coincidental or accidents. They're not accidents, they are deliberate and calculated.
And you think this is deliberate in a spiritual level, or consciously deliberate here by people who are saying, like Bill Gates or whatever, that goes around and sterilizes people, or you think it's completely deliberate like that? Yeah, we need to get rid of the poor. There's one guy who's an economist from Oxford or somewhere. I forgot his name. He wrote this horrible book called The Bottom Billion, where he basically blamed Africa for being poor, blame African for being
That's
poor,
ridiculous.
and asked for military intervention. And this book was given in my alma mater university, UBC, by the then president of the university, who was a figurehead, idiot, I think, in my opinion. He gave it as a prize to student leaders. This book, which is
Oh,
a
wow.
horrible book.
Uh-huh.
But the activist-minded students at university were really pissed off, and they wrote scathing reviews of the book.
Uh-huh.
But when I went to the and I got the book and I went into this meeting, and when I started coming to other students who were there and saying, "Hey, did you read this book? What he's saying?" And people are like, "Oh yeah, it's awesome, it's amazing."
Oh my gosh.
They're totally like fell for this trick of prestige that the president is giving them this thing, and it's such an honor. They fall for these tricks of hierarchy
Right, right.
that want you to try to tell you that you're better than other people, which is one of the myths that the universities perpetuate. And you see that
Right.
in the elite universities, it's even worse. They tell everybody they're the brightest and the best. It's one of their phrases.
Yeah. Again, what you will recognize at the upper echelons with a lot of these schools like Yale University is that there is an elite group that is picked and that they are groomed to rule and that they
Yeah.
are catered to and taken care of because they are born into a certain bloodline. And these secret societies have been working in such manner since going back to the beginning in order to corrupt and to choose of this particular bloodline these people that have such evil inclination. And they
Right.
teach them these racist
Like John
beliefs.
Kerry and Bush and their society in
Well,
Yale.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And
But even like these
and he's somebody who's
scientists,
mentioned flat Earth. He attacks flat Earth deliberately. John Kerry.
yeah, when they know the truth. I mean, they do it in order to make a show, just like Obama mentioning it in the speech. But
Right.
they fly it on the flag of the United Nations
Right.
as the seat of world government. They certainly know the truth. I mean, they're mocking us, laughing at us,
Right.
and that's one way for them to do it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I guess Bush was one of the first people who were out saying let us not tolerate this conspiracy
Right,
theories.
right.
He
Yeah,
was
fully.
using that meme early on when it comes to 9/11. And as far as 9/11 goes, you don't think there were planes?
No, not at all. In fact, you see the live footage from the helicopter, and it doesn't show any plane hitting the building. And plus, if a plane hit the building, it would the way that the World Trade Centers were created with the outer steel wall, it would have never have submerged or entered into it to begin with.
Well,
And the
it
fact
comes off
is,
the other side, I guess, in the footage.
well, yeah, that's like it's some kind of missile or something small to where we can't see that it's entering, but certainly we see it coming out the other side.
Yeah, well,
Uh,
I think it's just the animation that comes out the other side. Apparently, from what I saw, the analysis I saw, they compare what's coming out the other side with what's coming in, and it looks exactly the same. It's supposed to be the plane, right?
right, right. Well,
Uh,
something certainly caused the explosion,
right.
which I think they had planted all that before the events ever occurred. I mean, the levels of the deception go so very deep, and that's something which all of us are still trying to make sense of as well.
Well,
Because again, I mean,
I interviewed a person in flat Earth who community who's a very smart guy, and he did consulting work for mining companies before he had a near death experience in a motorcycle accident. And he was working for AMAC, which was one of the contractors that had his fingers on the building. So he says that they were involved in taking the building apart, and he was warned while working for them that he shouldn't be looking into it because if he had wife and children.
uh,
He said that in the mining industry, they all laugh at the idea of the moon landings, that because
right, right,
they deal with machines that have contain actual pressure, and they use very thick, 20-inch thick steel walls that still cannot contain some of the pressures that they use. And but in the vacuum of space, you can get just that tin can flying and all
right.
that stuff. He says that they used to chuckle in the back rooms and make in jokes and things like that.
Yeah, they're laughing at us fully.
Yeah. All right. So we've been talking for what? It's been a while. So
Yeah, long
anything
time.
else? I see that you seem a little bit tired now. And told
Yeah, I'm good. And if you ever want to, if you have more questions or if you want to talk about any particular thing, I mean, we still haven't gone into great depth on the books, and there's so much information there. So,
well,
but
one
it's good
thing.
to,
Sorry, one thing that I really wanted to ask you about, and I didn't now that I mentioned the book, is the calendar, the lunar
yeah.
calendar, because
Oh my gosh, that's a whole nother interview. We
it's like a
we
lot.
should we should save that one because it would take a long time
Okay,
to
cool.
explain it. But basically, that's one of the things that I came to discernment on when I decoded the book of Enoch. And it shows us that the way that the Most High established the stars, as far as the sun and the moon, to be witness to the calendar system. The sun is aligned to the day, and there's a 364-day solar calendar, but there's also a 354-day lunar calendar, which establishes the Sabbaths and
Right,
because the moon works in 7-day phases, and so Sabbath is adjusted according to the witness of the moon, the new moon day establishing the first day of the lunar month, and then the 4 7-day uh, quarterly phases of the moon establish the 4 Sabbaths, and they align with the first quarter, the full moon, the third quarter moon, and the lunar conjunctive moon. And so, yeah, this is a whole
they can be
nother.
organized in precisely for seasons. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And the two calendars work together. They are intercalated as well. But yeah, that's something that we'll have to share and talk about at another time.
Cool. So let's leave it here, and then I'll just keep reading, and I'll take a look and see more details, and then I can contact you. Is it okay through Skype or oh yeah, I have your email.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah,
have your email
certainly.
as
Yeah,
well.
just let me know. Yeah, just let me know when you're ready and when you want to do it and what particular topic. I mean, there's lots to speak about.
Very nice. Do you should I also send you our conversation Is that something you want to have
Oh
this
yeah,
time?
send me a copy of this one and then I'll edit it and release it for publication as well. I think the shows that we're doing together are really profound and that they will be a great benefit to a lot of people. That a lot of people will enjoy listening to and hearing these shows. So
Yeah, very nice, very nice. Totally. So I'll try to find some interesting material out as well that we can discuss from my side of things, and some actual stuff, maybe some quotes and things like that, that we can then discuss in it. But I'll look into your books more in more detail.
okay,
Um,
sounds good.
and
I
also,
think
I'd
maybe
love to have your book, the one that you wrote, your
oh
early book,
yeah, yeah, I'll do
When the
it.
Evening
I'll share
Dies.
both of them. Yeah, I'll share When the Evening Dies and A Different Way of Being with you, so you
Yes,
can check all that out.
yes.
But the next time we come together, I'd like to spend a few minutes just talking to you about what this is for and what it's about, so that people can know more on that aspect of it as well.
Okay, yeah, that's perfect. No problem.
Okay, brother.
All right,
Really good
man.
speaking with you, and definitely send me the copy, and then I'll work on both of these shows sometime very soon.
All right. Thank you so much, Zen. And it was
All right.
a great
Be
pleasure.
blessed.
I learned a lot, man. Thank you very much. All right.
Yeah, myself as well. So be blessed.
You too. Thank you.
Shalom.
Bye.
Good night.